have chosen to test this station's destructive power on your home planet of Alderaan, named the System Alderaan.
Bulky religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blast. Like we're coming up on Alderaan.
You may fire when ready.
Welcome to Alderaan Explosion Network's official countdown to Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. It's 63 days until release. My name is Dawn Blight, your Jedi Master, and joining me, my Padawans, Ashley Hobley.
Hey Dylan, excited to be here this week to ask the question, really? That's how it ended?
And Ciaran Marchant.
Hey, I'm really happy to be here with you and Ashley. I'm here to ask the question, why did I watch these backwards?
Did you watch them backwards?
No, I didn't. I thought it'd be kind of cool though if I did. You
It
know,
would be it would be terrible if you watched them backwards. Let's just start with the last episode and work backwards. That makes perfect sense, yeah.
It does.
Come on. What are you doing? All right, so this week we are talking about Star Wars Rebels. So this is, of course, throughout this season, I've kind of spaced out this season of Alderaan Explosion. Of course, we started with an episode where we wasn't talking about a movie, and then this is kind of a space break up between like the prequel era stuff, and then we'll move into the core trilogy plus Rogue One stuff, and then there'll be another like break up episode and so on and so forth. Anyway, so yeah, we're talking about Star Wars Rebels, the show that finished last year, ran for 4 seasons. I absolutely love the show. I'm a huge fan of it. We've watched one episode before for The Last Jedi, the first season of Alderaan Explosion.
Did we?
Right? Or did we watch it for Solo or something?
I don't
Or
think we've watched any.
did I dream about adding it and then
No, we did watch some episodes of, because we watched the Darth Maul episodes.
Yeah, I thought we watched like Darth Maul or something.
We watched like
I think you just showed us that one clip that one time
Right.
of Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul.
Yeah, which is a thing in Rebels. So yeah, if you're listening to this, you've never watched Rebels, we're going to be spoiling stuff, obviously. We're going to be talking about 4 episodes, which I'll give you. I'll try and do like a brief synopsis off the top of my head of what's about, and then we're going to be doing the usual show. I wrote down notes, jumping off points. There are key things I wanted to talk about from these last 4 episodes, particularly to do with the world beyond the worlds and the Palpatine stuff that happens in these episodes. So they're like the core points here, but we're going to discuss the episodes as a whole. Why not? But first, have you two watched any other Rebels? And how was it just jumping into the last 4 episodes? If you haven't, Ash.
I had watched the first season, I think, as it was released back whenever that was. And then I sort of dropped off it because obviously the distribution in Australia is terrible.
It's fucking terrible. It's disgusting.
So I knew who all the characters were. Obviously, they look a little bit different, that kind of thing. But obviously, there's a lot of things that have changed. Quoting one person who wasn't around anymore. But I think I'd actually seen the season finale. I think my brother was watching it and I'd seen like bits and pieces of it. Like as I was walking past the room or whatever. But yeah, overall, it was a good experience. I think it makes me want to go back and watch more, obviously, and maybe fill in the gaps. I will say screw you to our beloved Service Tract, because the way they've listed it, obviously they've split the last episode into 2 parts.
Yeah.
The family reunion and farewell. But then they listed the run time of the first part as 45 minutes. So I'm got to the end of this episode. I'm like, great, it's going to continue from here. No, that was it.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things because I remember it's one of those weird, like, in some places it's listed, the finale's just listed as one thing. But when it aired, it was like aired as like back-to-back episodes.
Yeah.
But they were still separate episodes. It's a whole
no,
weird
it's
thing.
Track's fault
I
for
was
listing
wondering,
it as
like,
a 45-minute episode.
Yeah, it's all over the place in different listings and DVD, like what it's listed on the DVD and whatever
now
else.
I understand some of the negative reaction to the finale and the resistance, I guess.
Oh, you got negative reactions. Oh, for the Resistance TV show.
Resistance TV show, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, we'll discuss that, of course, when we get to it. But this is one of those things where it's like, you could be like, oh, but now I've had the ending spoiled for me. Maybe I was going to go watch it. This is one of those times where I think actually kind of having someone be like, here, watch the ending, watch the really cool stuff that happens here that might just be like kick a fire into your ass to make you actually go back. Whereas if you'd never watched anything else, you might not have ever gone back. You know what I mean? Like you're like, oh, this is where we end up. Maybe I will want to go back now, kind of thing. Whereas you might not have previously. Ciaran.
All I had seen was the Darth Maul episode and the small teasers they released leading up to when the first season was coming out, like the
webisodes,
to meet characters. I think that's all I've watched.
So basically nothing.
Yeah.
So how was your experience of watching the finale?
I really enjoyed it. I like watching the finale. I'm the type of person that
reads the last page of a book.
Well, not sometimes. Sometimes I do read the last page of books. A lot of the time it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I like it. There's a lot of times where, say for a TV show that I haven't watched, but part of me is like, I kind of would like to watch it someday, but when it comes out, I'm like, I have no intention of watching this forever, and I know other people are going to be talking about it. I will read whatever happened in the last episodes. Like, I will spoil it for myself, just so I don't get it spoiled by other people, but then I can understand what the fuck other people are talking about, just because I like being involved in conversations, I like talking to people. But there's one thing that I find really weird, and it took me a little bit to get to, was the lightsabers designs in this for the animation style.
So I know what you're going to say, but I'll just come in here straight over this. The lightsaber designs of this are more based on the original Ralph McQuarrie designs than the movies.
I do remember seeing them like this a lot more, but it just to have the lightsabers being so thin and so long, just it was weird. It was weird just based off everything else that is a lightsaber before. So that was the only thing I found for jarring about watching it.
Yeah. Does it watching these episodes make you want to watch it at all, or?
Yeah, it's always a plan. I will eventually get once I've watched all through Clone Wars with my friends, we will move on to Rebels. It was already a plan to watch through Rebels at some point. So
yeah, and it's also because people's complaints with be it Clone Wars or Rebels or any of these anime shows, even Resistance, I guess, which is I still am trying to finish up the last of that season because. Not for not liking it, but simply because the only way I've been able to watch it until recently required me to basically go through so many loopholes that the act of hooking it up, being able to watch it on my TV was such a annoyance that it made me not watch it. And I got a new TV now; it's very easy to watch it on that, so very good. Anyway, that was my side tangent. All of these TV shows, everyone complains. Of course, they start so kiddie and whatever else. But it's you skip to the end of a show like Rebels, and I'm like, here, watch the last couple episodes. It's like this isn't very kiddie. You know what I mean? It's no. Not at all. All right, so let's jump into it. So the first episode we're going to be discussing is season 4, episode 12, Wolves and a Door. So off the top of my head, description of this episode for those playing along at home who want a fresh burst is basically our crew minus Kane and Jarrus, who has died the episode prior to this. Basically, now the rebels are kind of deciding what they want to do and where they want to head. And this episode basically has them led by Loafwarbs to this Empire digging site, I guess is what you would call it, where they're kind of looking at these murals that are on these doors and trying to figure out what's going on there. And then this episode just has all of our characters figuring out how they're going to break in and find out what the Empire's doing in this thing here. So the notes I wrote down for this episode were, firstly, the Rebel soundtrack is underrated because it isn't John Williams. So that's enough. This is a little nitpick thing I have kind of for Star Wars in general. Whenever there's any music for Star Wars, this includes Solo or Rogue One or anything like that, and it's not John Williams music, people get kind of pedantic or a little bit too critical of it because it doesn't sound like John Williams music, and people always associate John Williams music to Star Wars, and then anything that's not John Williams, people automatically kind of go, well, this doesn't sound right. I think Rebels has a really great soundtrack. I used to listen to it on Spotify all the time. It's mixed in with my Star Wars shuffle playlist music, and it's really great. The key moment I wrote down is like when they jump on the Loth Wolves and they're like galloping across Lothal, and this music like kind of hits him with like big drums and whatever else. I'm like, oh, this is very good. Yes, let's go. So next note I wrote down is Loth Wolves are best boys. I think that's just kind of how do we feel about the Loth Wolves in this? Because they're these giant wolves, except for obviously they're more than just like dumb animals. They have throughout the entirety of Rebels, for the time you see them, they're shown to have a deep connection to the Force and kind of some they're not picking sides of like these people are good and the Empire's bad. They're picking the side that's helping protect their planet being Lothal, and the Empire, of course, is doing bad things to their planet, so they hate the Empire. But they're not like this is good, that is bad. They're just trying to protect their planet, and they're trying to show that. But I really love them because we don't often see like just cool creatures that are actually good, and Rebels introduces quite a few of them, including these Loth Wolves, Outlook Wolves, and they're cool. I think the name's funny to say too as well.
I think they're a good, for an animal that is so sensitive to the Force, they're a good representation of just kind of balance. Because I think even though we're always talking about the fight between light and good in the Force, the overall message is that the Force should be in balance. Like it can't be just too far one way or the other. So to have these animals that aren't one way or another, they're just kind of in the middle. It's a really interesting way to look at the Force again.
So then next note was adding this minister type dude as a pawn of the Emperor. I always liked. Shows he has more than just heavies and politicians working for him. So this is a character you see in this who's the head of like this digging site or whatever. And he's definitely not like a politician-y type dude. Your typical like Tarkin figure or Krennic figure or what have you. And then he's also not like a Darth Vader type or any of these sorts of things. It's someone that the Emperor has a close relationship with because he's speaking directly to him. And the Emperor has sent this person to Lothal to investigate and dig up these ruins here, which is where a Jedi temple is supposed to be and what have you, and figure out a way to get into this place. And it also shows that the Emperor is employing, I guess, arts mages. It's like the simplest way to like kind of sum that up. But I always just found it really cool because it's a different type of character under the Empire, the Emperor's reign that you don't see in any of the movies or anything else really. See, when I was rewatching these episodes, I was like, oh, I wish I had the time just to rewatch all of Rebels again because Rebels is so good. Because I was fucking getting emotional just watching these couple of episodes because I'm such like attachment to all these characters. There's a moment here where I just wrote down when Hera thinks about Kaine, and then I just put 3 crying emoji faces.
Just to forethought for all viewers, there's a lot of crying emojis throughout these notes.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's like, oh, they have such a good. Oh, I just can't. It's to discuss their whole like Kanan and Hera relationship would be basically an entire podcast for if ever you watch all of it, then I could be like, isn't their relationship good? Like, don't we miss them? But yeah, I just love that one. Next note I wrote down for this last episode was, I love this mystical shit, and the animation of the door's transformation is so cool. So Ezra and Sabine go down to the door, and then they figure out how to get into the door. The door, of course, is a callback to the Clone. Well, maybe not, of course, but the door is a callback to the Clone Wars episode, the Sons of Mortis, the whatever, Mortis something, whatever, the Mortis arc or whatever it is from the Clone Wars, which basically is where Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Anakin end up in this very strange place, and they end up talking to these 3 figures, which are just called the father, the daughter, and the son. And there's really one of the more like kind of out there Clone Wars episodes, and basically introduces these rather mystical Clone Wars Force figures. Have you watched the son, the daughter, and the father on this door thing. Have you watched those episodes, Ciaran? Surely you would have by now. The one where Ahsoka.
I can't remember. I don't believe so.
Okay, because this is like a whole callback thing, and it's like what exactly the connection is between these characters that Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka meet in the Clone Wars, and then how they end up being the figures on this mural painting thing here that Ezra then interacts with here. How that all connects, I don't know what exactly it all represents. That's kind of everyone on the internet to debate, blah, 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 but it's very cool nonetheless. And then I just love how, because there's other thing that kind of shits me off of Rebels and the Clone Wars and whatever. Everyone always says that these shows are like badly animated, but people just don't like the style or the art style or whatever. But I watched this scene where they interact with the door and it causes all the loftfuls on it to begin moving and stuff. And I'm like, this is really good animation. Why are people telling me this is bad? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, just because you don't like the art style or the way the characters are drawn.
That animation is good because it's 2D.
Oh, look at you over here.
Oh.
Fucking hotcakes over, Jesus Christ. So all right, move on to the next episode, which, because of course,
so is there any more significance to the son, daughter, and the father? Like, were you
basically
surprised?
Representations of stuff. People have spent a lot of time trying to work out what they mean.
A son, father, and a daughter kind of have significance, obviously, to Star Wars previously. So,
yeah, there's no solid like explanation of what they mean. That's what I'm saying. Like, you could do an entire episode just debating what they mean. There's no moment in either Clone Wars or Rebels where they clearly explain what they are and what they mean.
So what you're saying is, before Alderaan Explosion dies, we need to have a tinfoil hat episode.
Well, it's just, even in the Clone Wars episode, for not to like go over the entire story, but Ahsoka, Anakin, and Obi-Wan end up in this weird area. It seems like deep reaches of space. Something like that. They come to this planet, they land there, they meet all of these characters. While there, Anakin like has a whole vision of seeing himself become Darth Vader. All this weird stuff happens. When they leave the planet, they forget everything that just happened to them. So even they don't remember these characters. So, I've read heaps of stuff. People debate on YouTube all the time, whatever. I've watched plenty of videos of people trying to work out what exactly they mean. But yeah, I don't know. It's just this bigger animated world that's kind of set up between all these TV shows. So jumping into the next episode, season 4, episode 13, A World Between Worlds. Now is when we get into some deep, crazy.
This is some weird shit.
This is some weird shit. And this is
you take your edibles, you sit down, knock back some acid.
Take one big puff and then press play.
Well, this is one of those episodes where even when watching it at the time when it originally aired, I was like, either this has big implications for the future of Star Wars or it doesn't. And I still don't know yes or no, like where we lay on that. But so basically this episode continues on from the last one. Ahsoka has entered a portal in the wall through the mural painting that the Emperor was trying to get into. And he ends up in a place that is called A World Between Worlds. Now, I will say a little asterisk here before we jump into my notes and kind of go over what happens in the episode. But Dave Filoni, who is the unsung hero of Star Wars for like the past X amount of years, Clone Wars, Rebels, he's now one of the main dudes working on Mandalorian and whatever else. He's such a good at like sneaking in little details. Like after this episode aired and people would ask him in interviews, like, so like World Between Worlds, do you want to explain that? And he would never really explain it, but he always went back and explained that like we had been here before. And there was like several times in season 1 where it didn't look like this, but it apparently is the World Between Worlds. But then he was trying to hint at like subtle things being like, oh, but what if other characters and other things have been here? But it looks different and it's quite crazy. So when the voices, the first thing I wrote down is the voices when Ezra walks across the bridge gives me goosebumps every time. you hear voices from the past like Anakin and Obi to voices from the future like Kylo Ren and Rey. Now, obviously, this is easier to hear if you're watching it with headphones on like I was, but once again, it's just one of those really cool scenes where Ezra's walking along, you hear Obi-Wan quotes and whatever quotes over here, and next thing you can hear Kylo Ren fucking saying stuff, Rey saying stuff over here, whatever else. So inside the world between worlds, which is kind of like a limbo point, I guess, which is where Ezra is in this scene. Future, past, and present, I guess, is all happening
At the same time.
At the same time. It's one of those weird kind of sci-fi things where everything is happening at the same time. Next note I wrote down is Convor, my bird. My little bit of trivia, my bird, I named Convor. It's named after the type of bird, the Convor bird, which is the bird that follows around Ahsoka in all these sorts of things. Even in Clone Wars, you see Convors show up all the time whenever Ahsoka's around. A little bit of Dylan trivia there for you. My parents.
And there's your Dylan trivia for this episode of Alderaan Explosion.
Wow, that's
Join us
the
next
only
time.
piece of trivia he'll give all episode.
My parents were like, what the fuck is a Convor? And I was like, oh, it's a Star Wars bird. Shut up. Like,
Okay, what is it though?
well, it's just a bird. Like, it's a type of bird. Convor.
But what is it though?
I don't know. There's another character in that Dooku lost.
Why are you the Jedi Knight again?
I don't. there was a character in that Jedi that Dooku audiobook thing that we discussed a couple episodes back. One of the Jedi in that story, that was like one of Dooku's friends as a kid, has a Convor as a pet as well. So I don't think there's any like big city. They're just a cool bird, I guess. I don't know anything beyond that. They look cool. That's all I know. And then, all right, I cry every time he saves Ahsoka.
I mean,
two
you
sad
shouldn't mess with
emojis
time.
this time. This scene is fucking nuts. This scene, this is one of those moments where, you know how I was talking about a couple episodes ago about like, better be recording Dylan if Ahsoka shows up in the Obi-Wan series or anything like that. You should have had a camera on me when I'm watching this episode and he fucking pulls Ahsoka through that portal out of the temple on Malachor, or wherever the fuck it was, away from Vader. Vader tumbles to his... No, he survives, of course. But Vader tumbles down below wherever he goes. Fucking get out of here. And then Ezra pulls Ahsoka out. And I was just like, oh my fucking God. You could not have seen my mind blown more. This is one of those things where I swear I was watching. You know, want to watch my reaction to the episode 9 trailer where I'm just like, I hear the Emperor's voice. And I'm like, oh my fucking... You know, I'm like, my brain is just exploding. This is like a Dylan brain exploding moment when this happened.
What is this? What are you showing me? No. Ahsoka! It can't be.
The thing about this is it doesn't introduce time travel per se into Star
It does.
Wars.
It definitely does.
It's not. I don't know.
time travel.
It's time manipulation. I don't know if it's not like they can jump in a machine, just travel to X area or what have you. Like they don't
But
know how to control the
The
portals.
MacGuffin that is the Force is capable of time travel.
Yep.
Well, we don't know. Like I guess
I don't
we
know if you know this, but Rise of Skywalker is actually going to be a direct adaptation of Avengers Endgame.
Please no. I don't. I have lots of problems with time travel and stuff. I don't have a problem with this because it's so.
Because it saved Ahsoka.
No, well, yeah, there's that. But it's just because like
That is the most
have, like-
accurate.
they have no control over it. Not anyone can get in there. Literally, Ezra, like, and of course, we get into it in a moment. The Emperor, of course, is trying to get into here because imagine if the Emperor had the power to access an area where you could travel between past, present, future, what have you. That would be insanity.
Maybe
really,
he
but-
did. Maybe he
Well-
went back in time and did a biff and told young Palpatine what to do.
I mean, see, this is where I put my. This is where,
Maybe old future Palpatine went back in time and boinked Anakin's mum without her. No, that's not even. Let's not go into that.
I mean, that would explain why he's trying to find all these Jedi temples, you know?
This is one of those things where, see, I feel like I fall somewhere in the middle for this question. There are some people who believe that the animated series, the books, the comics, what have you, have like little to no bearing on like the mainline films. Other people believe that they could have, major effects. I think I fall somewhere in the middle, which is that like, obviously they've used like Saw Gerrera and brought him into live action and whatever else. Like they've proven that they're not afraid to reach into extended universe materials and whatever. Will something like The World Between Worlds, which is introduced in a fucking spin-off cartoon series, be used as a main plot line in the final Star Wars Skywalker movie? I'm going to put a no on that one. Although a lot of people on Reddit and whoever, ever since this episode dropped, have been debating like how, because of course you see something like time travel, they introduce a lot of Palpatine stuff into here, and we're going to discuss some more Palpatine stuff when Palpatine comes into it in a second, but it's like, it seems like they're introducing a lot for not to do anything with it, but I'm like, I just find it hard to believe they could, but then it's like, someone goes in who hasn't watched Rebels and they're like, the world between what? Fucking time travel? Did you just copy Endgame? You know what I mean? Like, why? There's so many like things they could get themselves in trouble with here. So the next note I wrote was simply, by the way, this is the moment on the Revenge of the Sith episode I mentioned that had me OMGing. Ezra not saving Kanan shows his strength. So this is another really cool moment.
Should have saved him.
No, he shouldn't have. It's like another really good, like, it's just, because
what's the difference between saving Ahsoka and saving Kanan?
Yeah.
Because if they pull Kanan out, they all die. Like, the only reason that, like, Ezra and everyone lives is because he's holding back the fire, so. Like,
but if you pull him away at the last second before he gets engulfed in the fire. Well, the two of them are there. They could have pushed the fire back for a little bit and then pulled Kanan out. But no.
I think they would have both died. The thing with pulling Ahsoka out of her time period is
Ahsoka gets to live. Yeah, we get it.
Well, no, it's not just that. It's just that it doesn't affect anything else. Like, she's not like like there's no event happening around her that pulling her out of it disrupts time, you know?
Yeah, because he thought about that before he did it.
Yeah.
No, he definitely did think about that before he did it. He just pulled Ahsoka.
That would have had massive repercussions to Darth Vader. Darth Vader would have killed her and then would have been emotionally affected by that decision.
No, she was prepared. She finally had decided she needed to finish off Darth Vader. She had her pocket full of sand ready, and she was about to like spiral down and throw it in his face.
Yeah, in another universe, Darth Vader gets a face full of sand. He gets crushed by a bunch of rocks. The universe is saved.
You can't stop rocks.
Ezra, you've ruined everything.
Choking on sand. Fucking
you mess
Ezra.
with the timelines.
You piece of shit.
Everything goes.
You're gonna mess with the timeline once. You're gonna mess with it twice.
Fucking Ash is look at you all giving shit about time travel. Where Ash is over here like Avengers Endgame, 10 out of 10, movie of the year. I'm like, now time travel and stuff is fucking shit.
Don't forget
There's no rules. It makes no sense. Yeah. So after all, I think the whole thing of him not saving Kanan, I do like that because it shows that he has. That's one of those, because Ezra, they kind of write throughout Rebels, they kind of write Ezra kind of like Anakin-ish, which is like he's a kind of shit of a kid, but they do it better than they did with Anakin, obviously, where at times he kind of does like the whole like spoilt bratty kind of thing, like that whole stereotype or whatever, but they actually managed to write him well enough that like his character development works and it never like fully pisses you off and seems weird, and he doesn't say weird lines like I don't like sand, so obviously the writing's better and what have you. But then like if he's like similar to Anakin, then having a moment here where if it was Anakin and he had like a chance to like pull Padme out of like a moment she died or something like that, you know, like he would have just done it. He would give zero fucks about any repercussions or anything like that. But here,
like Ezra did with pulling Ahsoka out.
Yeah, he didn't think that. But here he actually has Ahsoka to be like, if you pull him out of his time, then use all, you know, he dies there. That keeps you alive. You need to leave him there, and he chooses to do so. So shows that he has some strength there. So next, what happens then is kind of crazy. So my next note is seeing a Sith with a cauldron-like object and casting dark magic is something I wish they explored in the main films. There's a lot of dark magic in talk, but no action. So even like the main trilogy, the prequel trilogy, you get a bit of force lightning, you get a bit of capes and red lightsabers or what have you. But like the whole like menacing thing, because the first Sith we ever see, obviously, episode 5, we see Palpatine. It's like this really like, disfigured face person with a fucking hood on and everything. Very like witchy vibe, but they never like go deep
Isn't
into...
Vader the first Sith we see?
Oh, I guess, yeah, true. Yeah. But like full, like when you see his master, it like gives you off that whole witchy vibe, I guess. And it wasn't until like this where they kind of explore it. Like you literally see Palpatine with like a fucking cauldron like thing, like literally whipping up a spell. And they do explore like some black magic type stuff or whatever you want to call it in like Clone Wars when it comes to like Maul's planet and what they do down there and what have you. But they've never really explored it when it comes to like Sith and stuff, and I quite enjoyed it, like showing that he's able to, like, if you're like, how's it work doing? What's the explanation? Like, I have no idea, but I just kind of like it. Is all I know. I like that he whips up this magic spell force fucking thing that chases Ezra and Ahsoka out of this place. Did you like it or hate it or?
No, I appreciate it. I think it's maybe they don't tackle this kind of mystical stuff in the main films because people might be a little bit too attached to science fiction, where this mystical kind of crap kind of falls into magic and fantasy a little bit.
Well, whenever I talk about Star Wars, I always tell people Star Wars is sci-fantasy. Or like, like people, Star Wars is science fiction. No, Star Trek is science fiction. Star Wars is fantasy. It's space
but there
fantasy.
is the ongoing look at it that I think there's a lot of unspoken, this is fucking magic. Force ghosts, that's fucking magic. But it's kind of just, it's unspoken. Like, it's just kind of like there. People accept it. It's the Force.
Yeah. The Force is the get away of anything, I guess.
Yeah. I think it looked cool. It definitely reminded me of some sort of Disney animated film. Whether it was Fantasia or something involving Maleficent or something. Just that green fire.
I didn't see no broom chasing him out.
I mean, he had a black cauldron.
The last note I wrote down for this episode was another thing of me complaining about people complaining about animation. That shot of Ezra walking away from the temple after saying goodbye, Kanan. Who in their right fucking mind said the show has bad animation?
Wait,
and
is that the same temple they were at or another temple?
It's the same temple. It's just kind of
disappeared. Okay.
Disappeared. Yeah. Why? How? Don't know.
Where did all the stormtroopers go?
Dead.
Oh, so they all died there, is what you're assuming.
Let's I'll go ahead and assume so. Why not? Do I care about their families? Not particularly. And then
nobody matters as long as the circus fine.
That is all that matters. That's all that matters. So that's episode 13 of World Between Worlds. Now we're skipping episode 14. I said we're talking about the last 4 episodes, but I forgot there's an episode in between here. Episode 14 is just kind of a filler-ish episode of, although it's kind of dark because there's a whole fucking thing of Lothwolves running around like fucking murdering people in it, which is quite dark. But then we get to season 4, episode 15/16/whatever, just the final episode of Star Wars Rebels called A Fool's Hope. So first thing I wrote down is, man, I'm in the feels, but we're onto the finale because I was binge watching these all at I was like, oh, this is so good. All right, so I'm listening to all of the Thrawn novels at the moment, and those books fill in a lot of background about both Thrawn and Governor Price. So this is one thing. I've only recently begun listening to the Thrawn books on audio through Audible. They're what I've been listening to lately. And I'm on to the last one at the moment. I'm like halfway through it. But the first one in particular, just called Thrawn, I never realized like how, because obviously Thrawn's a character from the old EU, which they then announced was coming back and they was going to put him in Rebels. And that was like one of those like, whoa, like I remember when they announced that celebration, I was watching like the live stream and the crowd like kind of erupted because obviously Thrawn was a much beloved, like probably the most loved villain character introduced in the old Legends extended universe. So they announced he's coming into Rebels and he was in season 3 and 4 of Rebels and everyone loved him. Everyone like appreciated how like, they're like, oh, you fitted in fine. Because obviously in the original books, Heir to the Empire trilogy that was written back in the day, they were set after episode 6. So now they've taken a character that was originally set and introduced after episode 6, and now he's being introduced like during the bulk of the main trilogy, the original trilogy here. So it was quite a change of pace. But I never realized how much the Thrawn books, even though they're not written by someone that's involved with Rebels, would still have so much to do with Rebels, which is that it introduced to like lots of characters and people that he talks to and whatever else. I was actually talking to Nick somewhat recently because he's read all of them and he's reading the last one at the moment, and he hasn't watched Rebels. And I was like, he's like, oh man, this last book has so many mentions to stuff that's happening in Star Wars Rebels because the last Thrawn book takes place a week before the events of the finale. I'm like, yeah, it's fucking chock full of references to Rebels. He's like, yeah, I can kind of tell they're Rebels references, but he obviously doesn't get them and what's happening. So, whereas I'm like, oh, yeah, so give me a little tidbits of information and stuff that's going on here. Yes. So the original.
So who is Thrawn for people who don't know and haven't? In the current canon.
I was about to say, like, in the current canon, he is a character. To kind of just spoil his introductions in the first book, I guess, because the first Thrawn book introduces his origins. He's found out by the Empire on some like planet, and then he basically kills a bunch of Empire goons. And then when the Empire's like, oh, we're being taken down by so many people on this planet, it's just Thrawn because he's like a mastermind at like war and what battle and everything. That's his whole thing, and that was his thing in his original run. Like he was a mastermind. He's like Sherlock Holmes of Star Wars, basically. Like, and that's what they do in the book too. Like he has the inner monologue. So he'll be like, you'll hear a character talking, and then in the book he'll go to like an inner monologue and be like, their mouth twitches, like they're upset, but I can tell that, like this whole like Sherlock thing of he's reading people's body language and these sorts of things. Yeah, so he's basically sneaks aboard this ship. He ends up, for whatever reason, brought back to the Emperor, long story short, and he basically talks the Emperor into letting him start at a semi-low position within the Empire, and because he's so smart, he very fast works his way up through the ranks, even though the system's working against him, because obviously the Empire hates aliens, because it's like the analogy Lucas originally had him was like Nazi-esque.
Nazi Germany.
Yeah, they hate aliens, like they hate anyone that's not white, kind of thing. But he works his way up the ranks, and then when you're introduced to his character in Rebels, he's one of the top Grand Admirals, Grand Admiral Thrawn. He's called in season 3 because no one else can manage to take down the Rebels, and he's called in as this like grand tactician area. Like he's really smart. He'll work out how to take down the Resistance. So he's basically the smartest character in Star Wars. Well, supposed to be like the smartest villain within Star Wars is what Thrawn is.
I've often been told he's one of the most interesting people believe that, because this was before the current universe stuff happened. So this was when I was looking into the more Legends books, and everybody was saying you got to read Thrawn's arcs and everything. Because in the Legends he had a connection to Palpatine's like ghost or whatever, or there was like a image of Palpatine that was working with him or something. He's always been on my list of this is a character I need to get to look at and actually read his stories.
I've been not to go on the whole like why I'm listening to audiobooks recently, but I'm really enjoying listening to this one rather than reading it, because the person who's reading the book does a really good Thrawn voice that sounds much like the actor that does the voice in the show. So it's like you have that link in your brain of like they're doing this very similar type voice for Thrawn, so it works quite well. So
interesting. And voiced by Lars Mikkelsen.
Yes,
Mads Mikkelsen's older brother.
Yeah. Tie that in. It's all connected
and was Charles Augustus Magnuson in the third season of
Sherlock Holmes. That last episode. Which, spoilers, Sherlock shoots him. It was a big shocking finale.
I mean, that's a solution too.
All problems, yeah. Should just shot Thrawn.
Not the best solution. Well, probably the best solution. It's a weird one. It's grey area.
My next note was Thrawn is one ruthless SOB, hey, which is that, so the Rebels sneak into his base, because the whole thing about this finale, because the entirety of Rebels as a show is all like it's about heaps of things, but at its core, the show's about them trying to save the Thal. Like that's the small picture of the show. Not trying to save the universe. It's just trying to save Ezra's homeworld, which is Lothal. And they always talk about it throughout the show. But then, of course, the final episode shows where they're like, this is it. We're going for it. We're going to try and kick the Empire off this planet and get it back under our hands. So it just kind of shows how ruthless Thrawn is when they think they've kind of got him. And he's like, yeah, well, how about I just fucking bomb the city? Like, I'll kill all these innocent people. 0 fucks given. Do what I need to do. You know, like he has no care about anything at all. That's kind of like he's not like, oh no, I better not do that. Like the people might turn on me. He doesn't care. Just bomb the city. Do what I need to do. So then Ezra sneaks aboard, or doesn't say. Ezra goes aboard the ship because that's the only way he can get Thrawn to stop doing what he needs to do. And then here he is, the Emperor in all his young pretend glory. I kind of like how so Ezra's taken into this room where the Emperor is trying to talk him into basically opening up this Jedi temple that the one that was destroyed, that he's had brought aboard this ship like brick by brick, but Ezra still needs to open it because magical lock seals, whatever reasons. But it's like kind of cunning, and I always kind of appreciated how, even though, you know, Ezra knows he's bad and whatever else, you know, he knows the Emperor's bad. The Emperor's still being a little motherfucker here, and he's like appearing as his young self or whatever in the hologram. I always thought that was like a smart choice to have him do that, just to prove he's still like playing. And then
to
there's
humanize him.
Yeah, and then there's moments like after this where the hologram like flickers backwards and forwards, like when it starts getting hit. And I really enjoy that part because it's like, oh, there's nice looking Palpatine, and then every time it flicks to hit like what he actually looks like now, it's just like such like night day. Even though it's like, yeah, but that dude, the one that you think looks nice, it's still the same dude. He was still a fucking evil Sith Lord at the time, you know. And once again, I really enjoy this scene with Ezra, and of course, it has more impact if you've watched the entire show and more of a attachment to Ezra as a character, I guess. But like since episode 1 of the show, he's talked about how much he misses his parents and, you know, all this sort of stuff. And then he has this moment here where his parents are literally like kind of within hand's reach of him, or so he thinks. Like the Emperor's like, go there, go be with your parents, we'll bring back your parents. And once again, it's kind of like an analogy to how he used Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, basically giving Anakin promises of being able to bring back people from the dead and so on and so forth. Like he's always using people and using them by promising like things to do with their loved ones and like immortal life and bringing back loved ones and what have you. And here he is kind of doing the exact same thing, promising that he'll be able to bring back Ezra's dead parents. And that's kind of what he's using again. So Rebels has a lot of analogies, and like especially Ezra as a character, as I said, like very much like he's supposed to be very similar to Anakin and Anakin's type story. And then the epilogue, the last thing I wrote down for this episode was the epilogue is one of my favorite Star Wars scenes. I can't wait for whatever series they're cooking up for post episode 9. So I don't know if this is where you kind of want to jump in, Ash, and discuss what happens, because of course the episode itself has a lot of crazy shit happen even before this post scene. It's like even the way that Thrawn goes down, which is something you would never see happen in a movie just because of how like batshit crazy like fantasy it is to have these whale creatures come in.
There's these hyperspace jumping whales that show up kind of out of nowhere, or they have some sort of connection to Ezra.
You meet them like a season prior. This is one of my notes. I will never doubt. So for example, if we ever watch an episode in The Mandalorian and we walk away and you're like, that episode was weird, it seems like filler, why did that happen? Nothing. Dave Filoni he would always do this shit in previous episodes of Rebels where there would be an episode and you're like, what the fuck was this random filler episode? Which is like 2 seasons prior to this. In like season 2, I think it was. There was a random episode where all of their whole group meets these fucking whales in outer space, and they help save them from people trying to poach them or some shit like that. And it was like, I guess it was a fine episode, but like, that's weird. What's the point of this? And it's always like, well, it's there so that by the time you get to the end of the show, you know, like it wasn't a filler episode because it's necessary for them to be brought in here. You know, it's like lots of planning and stuff. So I'll never doubt
Yeah.
Dave Filoni when it
So they
comes
get
to
in this
connections.
hyperspace, they capture Thorn's ship that Ezra's still on, and they hyperspace away. That's the end of it.
Mhm.
And then there's a jump to the end of Return of the Jedi.
So it's after the galaxy's been saved is the epilogue scene.
Yeah, and then, Sabine and Ahsoka decide they're going to go find Ezra. And that's how they end the series.
Yeah. And they don't know where Ezra is because obviously they have no way of tracking
They
where
don't know if
in
he's alive.
hyperspace. Well, that's another thing. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, yes, he's going to be alive, and that's obviously what the next
Is he
series
though?
is going to be about. Yes, I think he's going to be alive. But it's like, they have no way of tracking him because you've got the entire fucking galaxy, and it's like, all of how do they track random hyperspace fucking whales and where they go? But it also leaves open the fact that Thrawn could, of course, be alive, which I'm sure would be something that people
Heard it here
would like
first,
to
Thorn
see
is
happen.
actually Snoke.
I mean,
Oh, Ashley. Oh, you know what? I think that would make people more angry.
Would it though? I
Maybe.
don't know.
It would. If to Thorn to go out the way, if like Thorn's story was to end up with him going out the way that Snoke died, then yikes.
I think so. People have been like, "Oh, but the windows are broken on the ship. That means they must die when they get to if they like end up in wild space
Let's
somewhere."
put the shields up.
That's exactly. People they've shown in Star Wars many a times that broken windows doesn't lead to actually you getting sucked out. That you can put up the ray shields.
We saw
within
we
Star Wars
all
universe.
saw The Last Jedi.
Yeah. And that's another thing I want to know. A lot of these things, although not directly connected, they often do little things in like these other random products that are like semi-connected. It's like, oh, the ray shields will protect you from being sucked out the window. Oh, Last Jedi or Rebels, like subtle things. They're not directly connected, but they are correlated. Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, my money is on. Oh, fuck it. I love this epilogue. Once again, watching it, I'm just like, oh, this is so fucking good. But as far as I'm concerned, Ezra's going to be alive. Maybe they, if I was to like put my money on something, I would say they've got sucked out to not some random place like in the outer regions of space, like a Tatooine or something like that. I would say they got taken to like the wild regions of space, which is what they basically refer to as like the undocumented places of the galaxy, like when
So the
people
place
don't even.
that in the Legacy or whatever it's called, the EU, the original version of Star Wars, where Thorn originally came from.
He does come from there in this version as well.
Okay. No,
Yes.
but where he comes from after Episode 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So what Ashley's saying is they've rejoined his timeline back up to
yes.
the end
Yes.
of where it used to be. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I
Yes.
think they've basically done. And I think that doesn't mean that I think they're going to do the exact same storyline with Thrawn. In fact, I think that if you have Thrawn show up in a post-episode 9 world, you can do lots of really
Episode 6.
interesting things of him, because even within the novels that I'm listening to now, they've proven that although he is really loyal to the Empire, it's kind of to a point, and that point is he wants to be loyal to the Empire because via that he's going to be able to protect his people at the end of the day. Like he wants to protect these people, and he's doing that by working with the Empire and getting to a high position there and being able to protect the galaxy, which means he's able to protect his people. So he's not like a crazy evil dude, which means that, well, he is in some ways, but he's not like super like, I want to rule the world crazy evil dude, which means that if he shows up post episode 9 and
he's
something,
lawful neutral. Like
Yeah.
he's got his own.
yeah, so he
Like
could
lawful evil.
he could change his direction in which he wants to go if he shows up. So I definitely feel like he's probably lived, Ezra's probably lived, and that TV series and the whole thing that you kind of mentioned at the start of this episode, Ash, with the whole like Resistance thing. So Resistance was the series that came out after this. Resistance is getting its final season this year. So Resistance is a series, animated TV show that only got 2 seasons, which is kind of nuts that they only got 2 seasons. And as far as I'm concerned, that isn't because they were like, oh, people think this show sucks, we're canceling it. They knew it was going to be 2 seasons from the outset, and that's because they wanted a show that could fill in this somewhat sort of gap of like, because season 2 of Resistance is going to run up to basically the start of episode 9, and the first season of Resistance ends where episode 7 ends. So it's like this very short period that show's actually covering, and it means they're able to like use that show as an animated series to have happening while episode 8 was coming out, while episode 9 was coming out, like to kind of fill this time period. And then after episode 9's out, then they can go do whatever this Rebels follow-up series that I'm sure they've been working on, of course, because animation takes a very long time. I'm sure they've been working on it already, but I think that's going to come out post that, and that'll be a series about Ahsoka and Sabine obviously trying to find Ezra. Because I'm like, why? And that's not just me being like really hopeful as an Ahsoka like fanboy over here. Somewhat.
A little bit.
Not a little bit, but also it's like
a lot.
But also try and tell me that epilogue scene doesn't just basically very blatantly say, here's a thing that's going to happen. Like it feels very much like, and this is a show that's coming, Like not tomorrow, not next year, but like here's a show that's coming. Whereas like what is that epilogue thing if not that?
But the thing for me is like there's a lot, I don't know. It feels weird that Ahsoka's been in the galaxy for this whole time period, but it's still, she's either very hidden or just very unknown. Like she has stayed undercover a lot. Like it's interesting.
As for me, I used to think that Ezra was counting on me to protect Lothal, the planet and the people he cared for so much. But one day, I realized there was more to it. There was something else I was meant to do. Ezra's out there somewhere, and it's time to bring him home.
I think having her alive throughout the entirety of the original trilogy is perfectly fine because, as we all know, she's not a Jedi, and I don't think she would have gave 2 fucks to get involved with. After what happened between her, like her fight with Vader in Rebels, where she finds out that Vader is actually her master, Anakin, like I in my head canon, once she runs off from Ezra in the World Between Worlds, she kind of just spends some years doing some soul searching, like.
How do we know she wasn't spit out like right before when she shows up in that last episode?
No, she spit out. Well, she looks older to me, even though she's got like the cloak and everything on.
Time travel,
she definitely
do stuff to the body.
But then she also knows about Ezra being gone and stuff.
Maybe she was just looking for Ezra. She doesn't have any dialogue. Maybe
that there's definitely things, but I definitely feel like that's a show that's going to come, and of course I'll be very excited when they finally announce it.
I mean, if they don't, I'd be shocked. That, or they're going to put out a bunch of books. Search for whatever Ezra's last name is.
The Search for Ezra. Yeah, I suppose it's a hard series to do because obviously it's a sequel series that's heavily reliant on the setup of you knowing who Ezra is and like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean,
how's it work?
feel
It'd
like
be weird. It'd be weird to cross mediums with it. It'd be like them releasing a movie and then being like, the sequel to this movie is a video game.
Yeah. So,
Into the Matrix.
I don't know.
Into the Matrix. Fuck off, Ashley.
Actually, even as a kid, I was like, oh, this game's apparently canon. Yeah, this means I've always been like a canon fiend over here. Like, oh, this game's canon? Yeah. Play it. All right, so that is it for this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed some Rebels discussion. Rebels is a great show. If you haven't watched it all, you should probably go watch it all. It's great. We are not ranking these episodes because they're not movies. The list is for movies. But next week, we will be discussing Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So make sure you watch that movie before then. Please share this episode on social media and tag @ExplosionPod if you're enjoying it. Tell your friends and rate it on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. Old Ryan Explosion is a Darth production of ExplosionNetwork.com, which is where you can also find What Do You Want to Watch, our fortnightly movie and TV podcast. You can follow me on Twitter @VivaLadil, VIVALADIL. Follow Ciaran on Twitter your boy Ringo. And you can follow Ash on Twitter @AshleyHobley, ASHLEYHOBLEY. May the force be with you, always.